And I remember, and this is way before WoW, when I started my YouTube channel at Cambridge, I was documenting the life of a Cambridge student. I got obsessed with it. And there were some quite uncomfortable moments with that, which were, you know, really close friends of mine essentially having to say to me, like, you know, you're a friend of mine. I'm not just a friend of yours. I've got things that I want to share with you. I've got things that I want your advice on. And you're just speaking about yourself a lot. And it just feels like it's all about you. Now, to hear that from one of your best friends, like, that shit hurts. But on the flip side, that's then, it's meant that now I'm into, you know, my YouTube phase is over. And now I'm, you know, working really hard on WoW, but I've kind of had experiences like that where people close to me in my life have said tough things to me, but I think it's set me on a much better course. I wonder if there was much of that for you.
Yeah, and I think interesting you say that as well, because I think it's the people who say that to you are the people I don't think you value as much at the time. Like when I've had that, and you have felt the same, you get pissed off and you think, oh, yeah, I don't want to hear that. And no, because obviously the situation you're in, that's counter to what you're thinking. So, but I think in reality, those are the best people to have around you, those who sort of just keep you grounded and keep you who you are. You know, I've definitely got that with my parents, but also been, for example, there's a lady called Alison, I don't know if you've met her, who I've known, I actually met her when I was about 15 years old at these Entrepreneur Awards. And ever since then, she's been like my business mum in the sense of she's always been there if I have a problem with an employee or anything. I'll call her up and be like, come on, Alison, I just need to shout and just vent this out. And then she'll like help me sort of compile it and so on. But the interesting thing about that is she's always been there to be a bit like, come on, mate, I mean, you just posted that online. What does that even mean? What's the reality of that? And so on. So actually, they're just to call me out, and having safe people around you to call you out, I think helps shape you. Because it's in this world where when you are an entrepreneur at such a young age, you haven't got your manager or your boss sitting you down once a week or once every fortnight to say, okay, what are your goals for the next 2 weeks? How can we improve of the last 2 weeks? You know, what's gone wrong? You haven't got that. It's just you and yourself. So having mentors and people around you, and even if they're friends who don't care about the business, but actually are there to protect you as an individual, I actually think is way too overlooked by entrepreneurs.
You know, what you're doing, whether you're doing on your own or with a co-founder, is bloody difficult. And you don't really get praise from many people. There are moments of validation when you get featured in the Times, when you get Young Entrepreneur of the Year, when your business hits a certain revenue milestone. But the ongoing, just getting through it can be really difficult. One of our advisors, Christophe Patin, who was running Rubik's brand, which owned Rubik's Cube, he turned around to me at one point and he's like, you don't need XYZ, which was a solution I thought I needed to a big problem. You literally just need somebody to tell you you're doing a good job once a week. Yeah. Like, you need that reassurance. And then on the flip side, when it comes to mentoring, I feel like mentoring is spoken about in a way that makes it very simple. You find a mentor, you invest in the relationship, and it lasts for a long time. But then I've spoken to people who've never had a mentor, who don't understand how to make the first move. So, you know, is there any advice you have for those people?
Yeah. On reflection, I realized I've near enough always had mentors to some shape or form. In reality, at the time, I never really called them mentors. They're just people I can call up and go to for help. I think as an entrepreneur, you know at the same time when the problems are going to hit. That's the point of an entrepreneur. So you then call up these people and go, yeah, something's about to happen. What do I do? A great example of it is I knew from really young age that finance was not an area that I was strong at. Naturally, you know, you're 13, you're not like you're sitting there, you know all about finance and how it all works and so on. But I realized if I want to grow the company, I need to be able to read the financial documents the accountants are making. I need to be able to understand them and make decisions on them. So actually, just through an event, through a local charity in Kent where I grew up, I was then able to meet a guy who used to be a finance director at Apple. Like, phenomenal guy, you know, done it in a real senior position at one of the world's best companies, now retired, who just loves supporting young people. And I met him at this event and I said, look, can we just go for a coffee? I've got some questions I want to ask. That informally then started to become something a bit more significant in the sense of every month we then start to have this coffee at the same coffee shop, and I'd then come to him and go, oh, here's my financials for the month, what do you think? Or what about this? What about that? I'm thinking about maybe raising investment. And he'd be like, don't do that, you're stupid. Marketing companies, it's very hard and they're near enough impossible because you're not going to get multipliers. And all of these questions that I then just needed somebody to quickly just shoot me down and be like, look, stick to what you're good at. This side of things is not worth it looking at it right now. And I think that saves so much time for me, just having somebody who'd been there and done it and knew the implications of it. And the same happens, for example, I mentioned Alison earlier for sales. Again, someone I met when I was quite young. I remember at the event, I was in like a suit way too big for me, walking around this balcony, unable to drink at the reception because I was underage. And she just came over to me and said, like, what do you do? And from there, became good friends. But again, for her, being a salesperson, I can then call up at any time and be a bit like, Alison, I'm stuck in this tricky situation right now. The client's saying this, or they're not responding to that. What do I do? And so for me, I feel like mentoring doesn't work well if it's super, super structured, because I think in reality, entrepreneurship isn't structured. That's the whole thing about being an entrepreneur compared to working at a corporate. But I think the principle of having great people around you can call is really valuable.
So are you a mentor to a lot of people?
I am, but again, not in like a let's meet up again in 6 weeks to see how things are progressing. But I am in the sense of like people will send me messages or ask questions and go, look at doing this, what do you think? Do you mind reviewing my pitch decks, one I get all the time at the moment, but like, do you mind reviewing this and I'll give them some advice and make some introductions. So I think yes, but I'm not really a big fan of that sort of structured method again, like I mentioned.
So, still on the topic of mentors, can you think of one particular moment or one particular piece of advice from a particular person that you can share?
I think it's loads of I'm trying to think of one standout moment, because I feel like the job of a mentor isn't to tell you what to do. So often it was subconscious messaging that would then drive me to make decisions compared to saying, stop what you do and do this. Although actually, I think one thing, reality that happened for me was when I was sitting down with one of my mentors, he was actually a bit more involved. He was actually sort of really supporting on the company and so on. And someone used to do websites, and he sat me down and was like, right, come on. And his exact words were, website development companies are like fish and chip shops on every corner of every road. And he said, if you really want to stand out and grow something, you need to differentiate yourself. And I think we always think about USPs and that sort of thing. And now in reality, it's very hard to get a USP in the marketing world, as you'll know. Like you can talk about USP and how you're different, but in reality, it's a service and it's hard to really have a pinpoint USP. But what he did say was, this is at the time when brands were desperate to get on social media, when even our own clients were like, you built us a website, but now what? People aren't visiting our site, they're not buying and things. So they said, what can you do to increase traffic? And naturally you think SEO, but at this point, this is now moving more to like social marketing. And then there was these brands who were like, we want to reach young people and the kids are on social media, so how do we get in front of them? And that, like him sitting me down and being like, come on, you've got an opportunity here, grab it. That then massively changed the company from going from maybe building websites for like little SMEs to now being able to do marketing campaigns for larger companies, bigger budgets, bigger time spans, so you could really get sort of your teeth into it. And then able to, I think from that, recruit into that team, because naturally I was like, this is a new complete sector, I can learn about it, but I need people who have done it before. But also then actually sort of have a key differentiator, which was if you want to reach young people, go to an agency run by a young person.